Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 1, Chapter 7, Every Tear, a Waterfall. Written and narrated by... Within the rally below, the entire speech was cut short for a few seconds as darkness engulfed Times Square, as well as the rest of the city. In shock, everyone who attended yelped in surprise from the sudden lack of sight, before everything slowly but surely began to power back on. At ease, everyone. It's just a short power outage. No need to threat. Knock assured through his microphone as the TV screen behind his body began to buzz back to life with a glitching effect. Glancing at each other, Void, Jida, Joby, as well as the married Lewins all gave a ponderous expression, and then to one of worry. God, this weather. Void, could you call Jay? Maple never brings her phone anywhere these days. Could you just check in on them for us? The large thorn asked as Tucker rubbed the back of his head in a confused state. Yes, of course. The spark replied, before pulling out his cell and punching in Jay's phone number. Void couldn't lie to himself. He was growing a tad nervous for his son's sake, given the strange vibes and tones he was taking in. As Jida and Joby chuckled at the strange event and turned back to Knock's speech of future hope, Void raised his phone to the side of his head and patiently waited. A few rings went, then another, all up till the call went to voicemail. Hi, this is Jay, son of the coolest people in the world. Just leave a message. It said, leaving Void a tad concerned and instantly calling again. Something wrong? Tucker asked, as Void winced with a nervous stare to his cell. Must be the signal. He isn't picking up. Either that or he and your daughter are getting along pretty well. Void said, trying to make himself laugh and ease his nerves, resulting in Sarv to scoff. Oh heavens! I swear our girl has been hoops and heels for your boy since the day they met. Hooted the large owl, leaving both Void and Tucker to roll their eyes with a smile. No kidding. They're best friends after all. Void replied as he tried calling again and silently panicking on the inside. With a groan, Jay slowly cracked open his eyes to the sound of an echoing phone ring. Darkness and faint flashes of both blue and pink sparks met his sight, along with a hazy fog layering of smoke. Jay, are you okay? The voice of Maple came, alongside that of Florence's. Goodness, what a terrible spectacle! Are you alright? Coming back to reality, Jay groaned and looked to his side, seeing and feeling as the two girls slowly helped him back upon his feet. Now coming in from behind appeared the rest of the Trash Pack members, who looked on with stunned eyes as to what just happened. Although Jay didn't see it, he had practically gone off like a bomb and blew everyone back a few feet, and that included some of the tech around themselves. Where's Lotus? The small spark then asked as he stood upon his feet. Looking around himself, Jay realized that a few of the power conductors had been damaged. Metal was melted, wires were fried, shadowing them all into a strange and barely illuminated darkness. That was, however, before something began to glow. All turning forwards, the Trash Pack set their eyes on a hazy yet bright purple shine, illuminating its way through the smoke. Audibly making loud hums, the source of light looked to start moving in a weird way, as the hazy light shifted from one side, and then to the other. Now grouped together, Jay and his friends all watched as this illuminated source looked to rise off the ground, dwarfing them all by at most 14 entire feet. As the smoke began to clear, the source of this energy began to take a more discernible shape. The familiar sight of a cubed and blocky head appeared to spin above a large and slim-fit torso. The cube was now much larger, looking to take up the size that was half of Jay's entire body. Below, and being disconnected, was without a doubt a large and bulky chest that was almost shaped in a heart. Coming out of it were a set of long and strong arms that nearly grazed the ground with a pair of clawed hands at their ends. As the smoke faded more, Jay and his buddies could see that these limbs were actually divided by the joints, all levitating there and mismatched with light and dark purple shards. A crystallized spinal cord appeared to stretch down from the lower chest to a triangle-shaped pelvis that broke off into a pair of large athletic-shaped legs that were also divided, as well as a set of sharp two-clawed feet. As all the dust and debris settled, the trash pack took in the back view of what was most certainly Lotus's true form. Being outlined with bright, white creases, the glass-looking being sent a wave of shock to the ones who gazed upon his glory, and he wasn't even facing them front and center. As Jay and the rest gawked upon the being's cracked and almost shattered-looking body, they all took notice of a set of 6 crystals floating around the glitch's head. 6 crystals that looked to mirror both Jay and Void's horns. Slowly, Lotus began to clench his massive hands. As he did, an audible glass-shattering crack was heard, for the being looked to physically break his fingers at the knuckle joints when closing. Static and strange hues buzzed off this glass being's form as he slowly looked from side to side, all while still facing away from the ones who had helped him achieve this form. In an almost heaving way, the trash pack all watched as Lotus looked to silently chuckle. As he breathed, they could all hear and see the glass around his chest caving in and shattering before cracking back into place with a sickening crunch. Raising his hands up in front of his face, the glitch looked upon them in an almost shaken manner, until at last, speaking.
Finally,
He said in a different sounding tone of voice. Instead of the happy-go-lucky rasp he usually chatted with, Lotus sounded to now have more air to his breath, more of a natural cadence that really threw the others off upon hearing it. For a moment, Jay felt excited, enthralled with seeing his friend's true form. But then, he took notice of his friends, and they looked nervous. The looks on their faces weren't that of curiosity or excitement. Rather, it was that of an uncertain fear. Soon enough, Jay began to feel it too, for he began to realize that something felt off within his surroundings. There was something that shouldn't have been there.
after all these years.
The glitch went on, as he then lowered his arms and began to turn. With audible glass-shattering cracks and pops, the massive force of power swayed his body around and revealed his now enlarged face. Still the same as its smaller form, but now with tiny little dots for irises, and what looked to be a creepy closed-mouth smile.
It's been so long since I've felt the sensation of my limbs,
Lotus said, as he awkwardly turned his arms, bent his legs, and tilted his head from side to side.
So long since I felt anything.
Lotus continued to speak as he pat himself down and began to laugh in a way that set the kids off in a negative light. In shock, Jay began to take a few steps forward, only for Florence to then reach out and stop him. Latching her paw around the back of his hoodie, she shook her head with terrified eyes until the massive being began to speak again.
A power unlike anything I've ever had before.
Raising his hands up, Jay and his friends watched as Lotus's forearms began to shine a familiar sparkly blue. And then from out of his hands appeared a set of buzzing, purple flaming Nova runes. Beneath Lotus's shard-like exoskeleton, The kids watched as constellations began to both glow and shimmer in an almost broken way. Like shooting stars, the traces of energy went back and forth, resulting in Lotus chuckling from the sensation.
It feels astonishing. Incredible. So incredible. The taste of prosperity.
Closing his eyes, Lotus's face began to buzz and flicker between his facade and his singular, glowing diamond eye. Jay was growing weary now. He wasn't sure as to what was happening with his friend. It was clear that with the energy pulse he gave, Lotus absorbed some of his powers and could now wield them to some degree. However, the spark was growing rather concerned with the way his friend was now acting because of it. Lotus, are you okay? The sparklet asked, breaking the glitch out of his mindscape and turning to look down upon the boy and his friends. The cube's once innocent face now gave off a sinister impression. Now, red flags began to arise within Jay's soul. Something felt wrong, extremely wrong. Something about Lotus now gave him a terrible impression. That couldn't be, the spark reasoned. Lotus helped him. It had to be his appearance, he reasoned. Lotus? Jay asked again, while the glitch continued to stare.
Jay, thank you for being oh so kind.
Tilting his head, Lotus continued to smile down upon Jay. However, everyone began to notice that his face was flashing between both his happy expression to an almost horrific looking face, then back to his singular glowing eye.
This power, your special little ability, I have longed for it for so long.
With his optimism fading, Jay took a gulp and stood back to his friends before asking, What? Looking to buzz and spasm in some areas, Lotus suddenly took a step forward, causing the ground below his feet to burn and char its imprints. In reaction, all the kids gasped and took another step back, feeling a sense of fear engulfing their hearts.
You are special, friend. You are more. You can help me. You can give me what I want.
Lotus went on, as he suddenly hunched with a heave and head tilt. Taking another step, the large cube looked to almost be adjusting to his new body. It was as though he was learning to walk again, to speak. What he was talking about, it was almost like a completely different person, someone who did not feel like the once guiding hand. Lotus, what are you talking about? Jay demanded with a terrified shout. But as he did, this demanding attitude flicked a switch within the purple cube's mind. Within an instant, the large glitch suddenly reached out and snatched Jay by his throat in a tight and freezing hold.
The power to reach the unreachable!
Lotus screamed before bellowing out one of the most haunting sounds any of the kids had ever heard. Screaming in fright, all of the Trash Pack members stumbled back, while Jay's face fell to that of a silent and mortified panic. As fear and confusion took hold, his horns began to charge with his uncontrolled Omega Warp, leaving the tiny spark to panic even worse. As he did, Lotus's grip began to grow tighter and tighter, while his face transformed into that of a contorted smile. Beady eyes locked with Jay's, as the image of a disjointed, tooth-laughing mouth bounced up and down like a broken pogo stick. As the others stared on in fright, most unsure of what to do, it was Florence who first collected herself and went in to aid Jay. To everyone's shock, the shy wolf growled and then leapt forwards at the scene. Opening her jaws wide, she bit down hard upon Lotus's arm. Still laughing, Lotus dropped Jay from the pain and flung Florence to the ground, right as the spark unleashed his warp the following moments later, transporting all of them to a different area, all while Lotus continued to cackle maniacally. Blasting out of their own individual white star-shaped portals, Jay and the others all went flying and crashing to the wet and soaking roadway that led all the way up to the power plant. With splashes and scraping smacks, all the kids hit the ground hard while a set of pained yelps left their mouths. Jay and Maple both crashed and rolled towards the middle of the road, while Florence not too far behind them. Poor Sprinkles and ZB went sprawling upon the water-ridden sidewalks, while AJ, Blippi, and Quinn went rolling upon the other side.
Ow! Ow, 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 ow!
Maple whined as she slowly got up on her knees and held her right arm in pain. Maple? Jay asked as he rubbed his head that had been cut from impact. Jay, are you alright? Florence asked as she stood back up with an audible pained wince in her voice. What the hell just happened? Sprinkles questioned with dread as she reached down and helped ZB up, who began huffing and grunting in pain. It was then the cube girl realized that the little cub's hand appeared to be broken. Oh. That's not good. The little bear said in strain while tucking her paw within her coat's side. Is everyone okay? Quinn shouted while Blippi signed the words, "Did he just try to kill you?" towards Jay. Slowly standing back up to his feet, the Spark continued to hear Sprinkles shout, "What just happened? What just happened?" As he then helped Maple and Florence to their feet. Did he? Why did he? Florence asked as she looked at her scraped up paws with an injured wince. I don't know. I don't know. Jay said aloud as his mind began to flip-flop between the causes. Did the cube go insane? Was that always his nature? What on earth was going on? Jay questioned as all of his friends grouped back up, some of them clearly in need of serious medical attention.
CB, your hand!
Maple gasped, only for the little cub to shrug with clear tears welling in her eyes. I'm fine. This is nothing, she said as Sprinkles helped her stand upright.
Jay, what the hell happened with your friend? Why did he do that?
AJ asked as he rubbed the back of his head in pain. I don't know! The small Spark retorted as cold sweat began to pour down his brow. I don't know. Jay repeated as he hugged himself with a shiver. I don't know what that was about. Glancing between his friends, Jay suddenly felt sick. They were now all soaked, torn up, and scared. He couldn't wrap his head around the last few minutes. Why would his friend do such a thing? What he said, his sinister intentions. Whirling their heads behind themselves, Jay and his buddy shivered as the cold laugh of Lotus echoed down the rain-darkened roadway. Suddenly beginning to flash, car alarms ignited the light and started to blare. Yellow shaded headlights and red glinting backlights went on and off upon the road, parked vehicles, going off one by one as the large, lanky figure emerged from the stormy haze. With each step Lotus took, a purple pollen-like energy expelled off his body that sent a fearful dread to engulf the trash pack. It was another similar energy to that of Jay's, a spark-like energy that only he, his dad, his cousin, and the other surviving Sparks shared. With each car Lotus passed, the louder their alarms went, crying as though to be wailing infants in need of their parent. The electronics within the roadside stores all began to ignite to life. TV screens and other devices on display all erupted to a stunning ignition. Screens turned to static. Coffee makers exploded with hot liquids. It was horrifying, the kids realized. This thought to be new friend group member now appeared to be on some kind of hunt. A hunt for the little spark.
Jay! Where are you going, buddy?
The cube asked in his mentally shattered-sounding voice, while his smirking face flashed between innocence and an evil, singular eye.
Get back here!
With eyes widening, Jay and his friend suddenly leapt backwards from an appearing static portal that blasted out a sharp and electrified hand that attempted to take hold of Jay's form. Then another appeared, and then another. Some were these strange and ghoulish limbs, while others were straight-up spikes of purple glass that nearly stabbed AJ in the chest. As each one appeared, the group grew more and more frantic on their toes, all up till Sprinkles said the very thing that was on everyone's mind. Run! Reaching down and taking Maple by her hand, Jay turned heel and began sprinting down the wet-sloped roadway while having the others in tow. Activating your skates in a not-so-comfortable form, ZB quickly and awkwardly rolled ahead of the group, while Florence dropped down on all fours to start running. Following in the Purple Wolf's steps, AJ also went down on all fours to keep his stubby little self up with the rest of the group. As for Blippi, Quinn, in a terrified breath, swooped down and picked the little artist up off his feet, knowing full well that he couldn't keep up on his toes. While lastly, Sprinkles just drifted along, going as fast as she could. As the children ran, they all felt and heard the sounds of several glitch portals opening behind their heels. Those terrifying sounds of snapping hands and protruding spikes sent a wave of sheer flight into all of the Trash Pack members' hearts, while they all attempted to stay by one another's side.
Jay! Please don't run! I thought we were friends!
The voice of the monster called, as portals began to open in front of the running group. All yelling in shock, they maneuvered around these rising hands and blasting blades by the mere slivers of the luck. With hard yanks, both Maple and Jay pulled each other from one side to the other as they avoided the possible and almost unreal-looking death traps.
Jesus! What's gotten into him?
The young matter girl asked as they all rounded a block corner and continued down the empty and stormy street.
I don't know! I really don't know!
Jay called back as sweat spilled from his brow.
Was he always like this when you two met?
Florence asked while leaping over another splitting portal.
No, not at all!
Young Spark replied as a set of massive spikes shot out from the ground. As these crystals arose, the tips pierced the underbelly sides of many vehicles and destroyed the sidewalks and fences upon road sides. Fire hydrants burst and storefronts crumbled as the distant cackle of Lotus called from the back like a chiming bell of death.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
AJ screamed in horror while ZB herself began to yell,
Help! Someone help!
Looking at their sides, Jay and the others took notice of a set of screens atop and along building sides, which all suddenly buzzed and activated with a singular eye looking through each and every one of them. There was no way to describe it. This was something straight out of a horror scene, as more spikes and claws appeared.
Lotus! What are you doing?
Jay asked in a cry, as the sounds of thunder roared in response.
Don't be scared! Please! Come back!
The glitch pleaded, as the friends all rounded another city corner, wondering on what to do.
This is it! We're gonna die! We're gonna die! We're gonna die! We're gonna die! We're gonna die!
Sprinkles cried with fear as she looked behind herself, seeing the purple crystal monstrosity slowly walking behind them in a steady pace. Looking from both his left and right, Jay both panicked and wondered as to where they could go. His powers felt to have been drained for the time being, so there was no way of warping everyone to safety. However, it was then he saw it. Not too far off in the distance was Times Square, a place where his father and many of the others would be resided. As far as Jay was concerned, this was their only option for help.
The rally! The rally!
The small spark exclaimed as they all turned down the road that held the large screen, facing backwards with many city folk behind it.
Oh, thank God!
Maple gasped out as everyone began to kick in the full gear and haul ass.
Your parents are there, right? They can help us?
Sprinkles exclaimed as she breathed in and out with heavy breaths.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Jay shouted as the sounds of Lotus's attacks began to grow distant behind the trash pack. However, that didn't stop them in their tracks. Keep moving, Jay told himself. Just keep moving. He then said aloud as they all rounded the curb and essentially entered the behind-the-scenes sector of the rally. Without breaking a sweat, the kids wasted no time and began to climb upon the stage's backhand side.
And with that, we reach our midway statement.
Speaking loud and proud within his maroon-colored suit, Nock tapped his mechanical hand upon his podium and smiled down to the city before him. Caught beside him stood happily within his little suit, while Jet stood guard with his hands clenched in front of his waist. Below, Void and the others listened on with strong ears, but the older Spark was still worried for his son, and continued to wonder why he hadn't picked up his phone.
I would just love to give a well-deserved thank you to not only my friends, but my family, who have supported me thus far. For without them, this place, no, this community wouldn't thrive as it has since the Great Battle. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart,
Help! Please, someone help!
Crashing in from around the stage's side curtain, both Jay and Maple scrambled onto the large platform, with clear damage and injuries visible upon their small bodies. Behind them, then came the rest of the trash pack, all scurrying to the front of the stage in a frantic manner.
The hell? Jay? Maple?
Nock asked, as his attention went from the people and then down to the kids. Jay? Void and his two girls shouted in sync, with Sarv shouting as well. Kids? She asked with surprise as they all stood up to the sudden confusion of those in the audience.
What the hell?
Sangsa inquired as he immediately took notice of the children's conditions.
Help! Please, someone help!
Jay pleaded as he and Maple practically stumbled into Nock's arms, nearly in tears.
Whoa, kids, hey, what happened? What's going on?
The tiny mayor asked while adjusting his glasses in a now worried manner.
Jay, what are you? By materia, you're bleeding!
Void bellowed as he, Jida, Joby, as well as the Lewins stormed the stage.
Whoa, what?
Cott questioned as both him and Jed approached the scene as well, proceeding to check up on the children.
Kids, what did this to you? What's going on?
Tucker asked as Quinn ran into his large arms while Maple jumped into her mother's fluffy wings.
Monster! Freaking monster!
AJ coughed out as he and Florence stood side by side in a drenched panic.
AJ, what? Monster?
Jida asked the little raccoon as she looked over towards her boy in a worried state.
What do you mean by monster?
Joby asked as she too looked over to her cousin.
Jesus Christ, we need a doctor! We need a doctor over here!
Sankson said as he took notice of ZB's shattered-looking paw. Everything began to blur within Jay's head. So many questions were thrown his way, several asks and demands, but all the little spark could focus on was his thought towards his so-called friend and his actions.
Jay, look at me!
Void pleaded as he shook his son's shoulders.
What the hell happened? Why are you and your friends all jacked up? Who did this to you?
Void demanded, while Jay softly breathed in and out, all the while staring straight into his father's eyes. There was no reason to hide the secret anymore. If he and his friends almost died, then it was better to be honest and secretive. He had to tell his dad.
Lotus.
The little spark squeaked, halting all of the adults' questions into that of an icy chill. For a long moment, Void and Jida stared upon their son in a taken-aback state. They weren't sure if they had heard that correctly, or if that's what was said at all. However,
A rising sense of dread began to fill their hearts, as Void questioned his son's response. What? Before Jake could respond to his father's icy reaction, Jet turned his head and immediately buzzed with a sharp alert.
Incoming projectile!
He screamed as the sound of something coming from behind the large screen was audibly heard. Sensing it as well, Jada quickly threw her arms out at her sides and warped everyone off the stage and away to ground level. As Void, the kids, and the others landed safely to their feet below, everyone watched in shock as a large pulse erupted from the backside of the screen, which shattered it apart with a split down the middle. In shock, everyone gasped and shouted, while others instantly started to run, for this once massive screen then caved in at its sides to an angle before bursting into flames. With the audience screaming and a massive space opening, Void and the other adults stood in front of the terrified children in a protective manner, wondering as to what exactly was going on.
Oh my god!
Sarv shouted as she and Tucker held their children close. Spreading downwards, the fire had caught wind and ignited a set of Mayor Roger flags, as well as the stage itself, resulting in the large flame to grow even wider in size. Kids! Car! Now! Sangson shouted towards his two daughters, who looked to then run to their mother near the back. Now approaching forwards with their weapons drawn, the other cops who had been on standby stood behind their commissioner, as he and the others continued to stare into the flames.
Dad, I'm so sorry, I didn't...
Jay sputtered as he gripped tightly upon the backside of his suit. Looking over his shoulder and then down to his son, Void eyed his petrified boy and looked to say something, until the shouting of another cut him off.
There he is!
Florence cried as she huddled herself behind Joby and pointed towards the top of the split slanted screen. Craning their sights up, Void and the others watched as one large, purple hand rose up, then clenched down upon the screen's slim top. Then another hand appeared, proceeding to pull up and reveal the figure in full. Hopping upwards and standing to his full height, Lotus looked down upon the world that was at his fingertips, and changed his face to that of a diabolical smirk. As Void stared upon the figure, his entire body felt to almost shut down. His breathing halted, and eyes shrunk as to what he was seeing. No, he said within. It can't be. Oh my God. Jida whispered as she too fell into a horrified and frozen state. Flying overhead, a news chopper shined its spotlight down upon Lotus, revealing his new and powered-up form to what had to be the entirety of the city. The storm continued to fall, but the fire remained strong, igniting his purple haze up into a more threatening aura. Looking down, the Glitch King set his sights upon those who were gazing up upon his glory, until taking notice of the ones who had bested him almost 20 years ago. As their eyes locked, Lotus's smile grew even wider, for he could both see and sense the horrified fear within Void's and Jida's hearts. With a devilish cackle, Lotus crouched down and then leapt from the screen, dropping all the way down before landing hard upon the flame-lit pavement. Slowly getting back to his full height, the Glitch leaned back in a sluggish manner and simply stared upon Void and his friend group.
What the hell is that?
Sarv asked in fright as she protected her kids along with a few of the others. During this, Void continued to stare in absolute shock towards the large figure, who simply eyed him with a smug and familiar expression.
Well, if it isn't my old friend.
The Glitch greeted first, while the sparks still remained in a terrified standstill. What the hell? Cod asked as he stood beside Nock, who stared in a stern state towards Lotus. Jida remained as silent and in fright as Void, while Joey began to brush some of the kids back. She wasn't sure as to what she was looking at, but it was most certainly not a friend given to everyone's reactions.
What's the matter? Can't even muster a hello for someone such as me. Or all those little memories flooding back in, stopping you from doing as such?
Blinking, and then taking in a long breath, Void held his arm out in front of his son, and then proceeded to take a step forwards. All around, the citizens of Aurora looked on in a curious yet worried state towards the scene, wondering as to what was going down. Jida, however, remained back and guarded her boy as well as the other children.
Blue!
She whispered through clenched teeth, as Void and Lotus now stood about 30 feet apart from each other. I knew I sensed something, but I never would have imagined that. Void spoke in a lower and more tensed-up tone as he couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't want to believe. It was him. It was the being that took his parents and many other lives. Although visibly and audibly different, Void could feel the same presence he had encountered all those years ago, the day he and Jida stopped him and his omniversal army. How is this possible? The spark asked towards the monster, as small surges of blue electricity buzzed up and down his arms.
Oh! Well, you can thank your little boy for this one. I must say, you raised quite the kind and trusting young one there, Noah-san. Perhaps too trusting. You sure he's actually yours?
Lotus replied, leaving Void to blink in shock and slowly turned to glance upon his son. What? Void mumbled before Lotus continued on with his ramble.
Boy, have I wondered what I would say to you after all these years. But now that it's finally come, I realize that I don't necessarily need to say anything. The looks on your faces are all but enough for the years spent trapped.
The cube exclaimed with a shrug and wink, while glitching out in creepy spasms that caused a nervous sweat to pour down Void's head. Although the same, Void and Jida noticed that Lotus was now more spry, less low and calculated, and instead more bombastic and loud in his sentences. It was almost hard to believe that this was the same entity they faced all those years ago. The hell happened to your voice? Jida asked with a scowl and orange flare to her hair, as she held Jay close by her side.
Oh, Jida Woods. Sweet, beautiful, innocent Jida Woods. When you spend years upon years crying and screaming into the empty darkness, you tend to rip a few bloody vocal cords here and there.
Stepping back with scared expressions from Lotus's laugh, everyone stared in horror towards the large glitch, while Void stood his ground and cut straight to the chase. What the hell do you want? He asked as his body began to flare up with a blue and energized glow. Speak, you bastard! Void coaxed as his fear was replaced by a burning rage. This part of his life that was once thought to be gone had now resurfaced again, leaving Void in a tidal wave of thoughts and emotions, the most prominent of which was an eagerness to defeat the Destroyer once again.
What I always wanted! To erase these pointless stories and start anew! But this time, there's one extra thing I need to make my dream a reality.
Taking a step forward, Lotus's face changed into that of a sinister smile that flashed and buzzed with a burning essence.
I need that boy of yours. He is the key to prosperity.
Lotus exclaimed, causing Void to impatiently take a stance and charge up with his cosmic electricity. You keep your hands away from my son, you son of a scrap heap! Void shouted with pure hatred, while Jay watched on with stunned and terrified eyes.
And what if I don't? What are you gonna do? Punch me back into a cube again? You know you can't kill the unkillable, Noah-san.
Lotus asked as he chuckled once again in a hunched posture. Maybe not. But we beat you once, and we can beat you again! I should inform you that my powers have at least tripled since we last left you.
Void retorted as he clenched his fist in a surging rage. Mom, what is he? Jay asked as he began to realize that whatever Lotus had said in the past was in some way, shape, and form a lie. This was not the kind of positive cube he had met the other day. This was a monster that gave both of his parents an expression that Jay had never seen before. Fear.
You haven't changed a bit, have you, Void? So determined to protect the last thread of sanity that's been holding you together. It's almost admirable. Dare I say, I think I've missed you.
Scowling, Void's panel lines began to shimmer with an accompanied pair of crimson blue eyes. He didn't care. He didn't want to stall anymore. He just wanted to get the glitch away from his new life he had created. He had to strike the demon down. You don't want this fight. You know how this will end. Void stated while standing his ground in a defensive stance.
Oh, so it's a fight then! Can't say I'm surprised. If that's the case, then let's pick up where we last left off then, shall we?
With a quick and janky lunge, Lotus swung his blocky-shaped head forwards and transformed his face into a Nova rune to Void's bewilderment. Not even a second after, a mighty and powerful beam akin to the matter conductors was shot from it, leaving the spark and all those behind him shouting in shock. As the crowd screamed in horror, Void quickly clashed his arms together and created his own large Nova rune shield that absorbed the blast, but pushed his smaller metal self backwards in the process. Seizing his fire, Lotus returned to his full height, reset his smoking face, and began to cackle with his arms raised. The glitch looked as though he was awaiting some kind of applause, perhaps an encore of some kind from those who watched, but all he received was fear. What? That's... How did you... Void asked in a tense breath, as the onlookers all began to run in several directions.
Thank the kid!
The Glitch King stated before cracking his knuckles and hopping up and down with anticipation, looking like a boxer awaiting for his next challenger. With widening eyes, Void turned and looked towards his family, who shared a similar fearful reaction. Jida was shell-shocked, and Joby was utterly horrified. Sarv and Tucker were stunned by what they saw, while Nock and Kot and Jet were left in absolute silence. Get the kids out of here! Void suddenly commanded as Sankson took a step forward and said, "Fire!" towards his fellow officers. Covering their ears, several of the Trash Pack members began to scream in fright as the sounds of bullets whizzed and popped through the air. "Sankson, no! Hold it back!" Void shouted, but it was already too late.
And away they go!
The cube boasted aloud as he raised his hands forwards and shot out several beams of energy towards the officers, who were swiftly turned to a crystal stone that crumbled apart mere moments after. "Holy shit!" Sankson yelled as Lotus wanted to strike upon him next. However, as the electricity bolt was released, the good cop was saved as Void dove and tackled him to the ground. "Get out of here! Now!" Void screamed in his face before opening a portal underneath him and sending the cop to be beside Jida and the others. "Go! All of you, go!" Void screamed again towards Jida and the rest, with tears welling in his eyes. Before they could reply, the spark turned back around and looked to the fallen officers, who were now fading the purple crystal dust in the wind. Those men had lives, he thought, and loved ones who would never see them again. This thought alone left Void thinking back to Salvaheim's fall, and in turn, filling his heart with rage for all those who had been lost. Looking back, Void eyed Lotus with a teeth-baring snarl, who in turn beckoned the spark to make his move with a cracking finger bend. "Dad!" Jay screamed in fear for his father, as Jida then promptly picked the small boy up in her arms. As she did, Joby, Tucker, and Sarv did the same with several of the other children, who all stared on with frozen silence to the deaths they had just witnessed. "Dad! Dad, no! Don't! Dad!" Jay whined again, as he and the rest of his friends were all dragged away from the scene. Jay wanted to help his father. He didn't want to leave him for the wolf in sheep's clothing. But his mother's grasp was tight and strong, perhaps a little too strong. Fear was beating off her heart, a familiar fear from an event that Jay had no recollection of, and it scared him. Mom! Mom, we can't leave him! Jay pleaded, waiting for her to look down with a panicking face. He won't be alone for long, she said, as they all sprinted for the parking lot. Looking over her shoulder, Jida watched as both her husband and the once thought to be dead nemesis stared each other down, giving her terrible deja vu from all those years back. Scowling, Void sent all of his energy down into his fists and rushed the large glitch with lightning-fast steps. Kicking off the ground, Void bellowed a powerful scream and went to punch his old rival in the face. Yet as his fist came down, Lotus reached up and caught the punch with his right hand. Upon grasp, Void suddenly felt the sensation of his electricity being drained. With stunned eyes, the spark watched as his own electricity traveled through Lotus's right arm in a vein-like strand of travel, and then all get collected into his left-hand fist that crunched into a punching position.
What? Did you think you were the only one who got an upgrade? That's cute.
Lotus asked, as he then punched Void with his very own electricity surge. Using the absorbed power of Void's cosmic gift, Lotus smashed Void so hard in the chest that the spark went crashing and denting into the side of a parked vehicle. Yelping in pain and coughing out a glob of blue blood, Void took in a short, sharp breath before asking, Impossible! How? Getting back to his feet, the spark glared the glitch down and reactivated his battle-readied white and blue cloaked attire. With blue surges, his spark crest ignited with a mighty and hopeful haze of power. Like a light bulb of ocean hues, Void got in a battle-readied stance and eyed his old foe down, preparing and awaiting for his next move.
All thanks to the kid. After earning his trust, he reactivated my powers out of the goodwill of his heart. And through that, let's just say he gave me an extra boost. A boost that will allow me to tear you into 1,000 bloody pieces!
Slamming his hands into the ground, Lotus cackled and went into a full-on sprint towards the spark. In response, Void snarled and charged right back with a set of lightning-fast steps. As the two got into a reaching range, Void proceeded to leap upwards and shoulder slam himself into the cube's blocky face, causing shards and glitchy saliva to fly into the air. You coaxed my son into freeing you? How? Void asked as he then took the cube by his head and slammed it hard upon the wet cement below. In a flailing motion, Lotus quickly spun and twisted himself around like a spider, throwing Void off and allowing for his next strike. With a quick snag, Lotus got back up and took hold of Void by his bouncy little head. Now with his own powerful slam, Lotus immediately smashed Void against the wet cement. In that moment, Void could sense it. An impossible relation that was emanating off Lotus's body. A spark relation. How could that possibly be? Void asked within, as Lotus's face contorted into that of its one-eye form, the eye that infested itself within almost every single one of his nightmares.
Don't play dumb, Nova-san. You know how. I could sense it the moment you brought the little guy home. He's a mistake in the system like me. A mistake that can give me what I want.
Picking Void back up, Lotus began to turn and whirl the spark around, and then with a powerful chuck, sent his body flying through the air with such force that Void went crashing through not just one, but several buildings. Screaming in pain, the spark deployed his battle helmet and took each crash head-on with an unbearable restraint in his soul. Blasting through neon lights and layers of glass, Void inevitably found himself landing hard into a metal building structure that was under early construction. Metal poles and support beams lined themselves along the walls that hadn't been established yet, while massive gaps and holes overlooked the stormy city below. Construction paper and leftover machinery rested upon every which way Void looked, as he now lay crumpled upon the cold stone flooring. In a weak form of movement, he slowly stood back to his feet in a now battered and scratched up state. That power, Void thought. Those abilities. Those were spark abilities. What did Jay do? Void asked within, when Lotus suddenly warped his way to the spark, and Roundhouse kicked him into a set of upright poles.
Your boy is gifted, flowing with an unstable power. That little mud has abilities akin to that of a god. You have no idea how special he truly is.
Lotus said, as Void weakly fell back to the ground with a now cracked open helmet. You know nothing about my son! Void gasped out as the massive glitch began to approach with heavy and burning steps. How did... That was Jaida's... Void stuttered out as the burning-haired Butte herself suddenly warped her way into the battle with a mighty flare. Screaming in rage, she kicked the glitch square in his face, now donned in her cosmic angel attire. Recoiling with a cackle, Lotus fell backwards and slammed hard upon his back, seemingly enjoying the pain. Following behind Jaida, Jet 2 leapt out and onto the scene through the musician's warp essence, with guns and weapons at the ready. Blue! Void's wife exclaimed as she got to his side and helped him stand up to his feet. Freckles, he answered, while Lotus slowly got back up as well.
Ah, so the serpentine cursed heroine and the rusty GPS wants in on the fun too, then, huh? Very well. Let's consider it as a good old family reunion.
Lotus welcomed the other two heroes with open arms, as well as extending arm blades from the undersides of his crystal limbs. Getting back to his feet, Void activated his father's spear alongside Jaida summoning her fire, and Jet cocking his blasters. We beat you once! We can beat you again! Jaida assured with that confidence Void admired, as everyone then kicked in the gear and attacked. With sharp swings and slashes, Lotus both attacked and dodged with terrifying speed, as well as agility from the trio's attacks. Unlike last time, Lotus didn't constantly teleport. Rather, he both flipped and twirled with a truthfully wondrous form. He was now like a bouncing kid off sugar, erratic and unpredictable, a stark contrast to his collected and serious nature from before. Where are the kids at? Void asked, as he only struck with his regular spear attacks, in fear that Lotus would absorb more of his energy once again. In Storm's van! Sankson is escorting them all to the woods! Jaida revealed the Void, before they were all thrown back by a ground pound from Lotus. With his fist smashing into the cold floor, the massive glitch released a powerful gust of electricity that sent everyone flying backwards and nearly off the construction site's ledge.
Oh, how I've missed this! How I've longed to enact such a battle! Let alone with my best friends in the whole Omniverse!
Lotus chuckled in a joyous glee as Void began to feel strain from the monster's equally strong attacks, if not stronger. Shut it! You have no right returning to this world, let alone hurting innocent children! Jaida screamed as she took a step forward and blasted a massive beam of fire from her hands. With an eye-widened smile, Lotus slammed his arms together in an X formation, and like Void's electricity, absorbed the burning essence to Jaida's absolute horror. Unleashing another laugh, Lotus swung his arms back and then back forwards, clapping his palms together and unleashing a power clap of purple fire. The wave was so powerful that it struck both Void and Jaida back to the ground in a pained state. Not only was Lotus attacking with their own abilities, he was mixing them with his glitch-like nature, resulting in hits that in truth felt like punches of molten lava. What? How did he? The burning-haired musician gasped out as Lotus slowly began the reapproach.
That's quite enough!
Jet exclaimed as he suddenly blasted upwards and down with two blades ready to strike. Slashing in a downwards clash, Jet jabbed and smashed his weapons upon Lotus, getting a few hits in and even kicking his chest to crack.
You're nothing but a soulless husk!
Jet bellowed before he was suddenly grasped by his head in a quick whirl.
Indeed I am, and so are you.
With a rapid motion, Lotus dug his claws into the sides of Jet's computer screen's skull, causing the robot to shout and wail in pain. Jet! Void screamed in dread as he and Jaida got back to their feet, but before they could even attempt to save their friend, the unthinkable occurred. Without hesitation, Lotus, with his other hand, gripped Jet by his legs, and with one and sickening rip, tore the once happy robot in half
with such brutality that his systems fried and completely went offline mere moments after. No! Both Void and Jida screamed as their adrenaline took hold, resulting in them to leap in and strike the glitch with a combined and purple attack. Poor Jet, however, was already long gone once they struck, for his limp and deactivated corpse dropped to the ground with spilling mechanical fluids. Years of information, years of companionship and fond memories, had now all been ripped away by the Glitch King, for his power and memory core faded to that of cold and silence. Striking left and right with tears spilling from their eyes, the Spark and Cosmic Angel unleashed a powerful beatdown upon the glitch. Each one delivered their own smash and kick that sent the massive being on his knees. You! Void screamed with hatred as he got ready to slam his spear right through Lotus's eye, but was suddenly stopped as the glitch smirked and caught the married pair by their throats, resulting in the spear to dissolve away. Cackling, Lotus began to drain their current surges of power once again, rendering the two of them almost useless in combat for the time being.
Oh, what's the matter? He was just a machine! You can just build another one, you know!
Lotus said with a devilish stare that left Void and Jida sick to their stomachs. That machine was our friend! You killed our friend! Our creation! Jida screamed in a sorrowful cry while kicking and punching the cube's cold hands. I'll kill you! I'm a Tira's name! I'll kill you! Void roared as he tried to release an energy pulse, but found that he was all drained.
If we're talking friends, I guess I shouldn't do this on my own. If I'm gonna snag that little power source, I'm gonna need some help.
Throwing both Void and Jida to the ground, Lotus took a large step back and then began to pulsate a mixture of both hot yellows and pinks below his exoskeleton. Weakly looking up, the married pair watched in disbelief as Lotus threw both of his arms out and blasted a surge of static energy from his palms. At his right, a beam of yellow began to create a figure, then to his left, one of hot pink. Rising up to nearly be the same height as Lotus himself, emerged two beings that looked equivalent to his glassy, levitating limb form. Standing tall at the king's right side was a lemon-colored, feminine-shaped lotus-like being, who had a pyramid shape for a head as opposed to a cube. An orange diamond eye buzzed in front of her spinning shape as she looked around the world in a quizzitive and destructive stare. The left one, however, was more of a beast than a humanoid shape, appearing on all fours with sharp spines coming out of his back, having a fat body, along with a swaying tail and dodecahedron-shaped head. This lotus-like glitch had an actual sharp glass-toothed mouth that snarled and snapped to the world upon birth. In utter shock, the married couple watched in disbelief as Lotus rubbed both their heads with a smile, and then pointed towards where the rally had once been.
Solidius! Oblivion! With me! Let us not waste any more time!
Turning back up, Lotus simply winked with a cheeky expression towards Void and Jida, before blasting a bolt of purple electricity into the ground that broke through the building's structural foundation, causing it to start collapsing.
See ya in a few!
The glitch finished before he and his two new creations leapt from the top floor and warped away into the night, sending the merry pair into a panicked state. No! Shay! Kids! Void cried as he stared into the stormy night, with Jida by his side. Blue! Holy shit! We're going down! The musician cried as the building gave way and started to come tumbling down. There was no time to think, no time to even recover Jet's lifeless body. For within seconds, everything was at an angle and falling to the world below. Reacting on instinct, Void reached out and caught Jida by her hand, proceeding to then activate his wings and try his best to stay afloat through the crashing rubble. As crumbling debris and dust began to arise, all Void and Jida could think of was their child. They had to get back to Jay, was all they thought, as both him and Jida were caught within the stormy dust cloud midair. Hang on, Jay! The Spark said as he kicked into full gear and blasted off with Jida in his arms.
following behind Sangson's police cruiser. Sarv and Tucker drove their family SUV that carried Jay, Maple, Quinn, as well as Florence and Joby, who sat in the back with an arm cannon readied. Close behind them drove Cot and Knock, who had Sprinkles, Blippi, AJ, and ZB in their vehicle. What'd I do? Oh God, what did I do? Jay asked as he sat curled up into a ball while panicking and hyperventilating. Hey, Jay, breathe. Breathe, hun. It's gonna be alright. Your mom and dad are gonna be okay. They're the toughest sons of bitches I've come to know. Sarv assured as she leaned over from her passenger seat and placed a feathered hand upon the Spark's knee. Yeah, it's gonna be okay. You didn't do anything wrong. Maple added as she interlocked her hand around Jay's and gave a comforting smile to try and ease his nerves. He tricked me. God, what was I thinking? He was locked in a chest. Why did I... Jay bashed himself as Maple embraced him in another attempt at ease. Wait, you released the Lotus Cube? Joby asked as she craned her head in a nerve-wracked way towards Jay. I didn't know. He was calling for help. He said he was a friend of Dad's. He promised to help me understand my powers. Jay tried to explain before Joby practically shouted in disapproval. That thing is far from a friend of Dad's! She exclaimed as tears rolled down Jay's face. Then who is he? What is he? I want answers, damn it! Jay boasted with a curse as adrenaline began to engulf his soul. Hun, breathe. Sarv gently asked again while rubbing the boy's knee. No! I need to know what's going on! What did I just release into the world, Joby? What did I do? Jay pleaded towards his cousin, who gave a worried stare in response. Look, I'm not that well versed on the story, but that thing, he's like a hive mind for a race of creatures called Glitched. They destroyed Father's world. They took everything away from him. Our grandparents, our people. God damn it, Jay, they're the whole reason why we're here now. They're why Dad fights to this very day. Joby explained as a crack of lightning shot through the sky. Falling silent, Jay looked away from Joby and recalled the story that his dad had told him that morning. The monsters of the night. He repeated as a cold chill ran through his spine. What? Asked Florence when Tucker suddenly screamed, Holy shit! Before anyone realized what had happened, they only caught the sight of a pink glow ramming into the side of the car, along with a burst of purple and yellow light alongside it. Moments after, all three vehicles went flying through the air. With what could have only been a fraction of a second, everyone was awake, then asleep, then awake again. However, now in a completely different space altogether. Opening his eyes, Jay found himself to be in a world of hurt, as he now laid outside of the SUV and in the storming rain. Glares of red and blue neon lights shined down upon his poor body, as all the other kids found themselves outside the vehicles that were now thrashed from whatever had rammed into them. Weakly groaning, Jay found that he and the others were now in a large sector of the city, where the roads combined into one drivable circle that went around a large fountain. Buildings stretched up high above him and his friends, who were all remarkably still alive. Maple, Florence, and Joby all lay scattered by the Spark side, while both Sarv and Tucker sat upside down in their flipped vehicle, both groaning and nearly unconscious. At the other side, Knock and Cot stumbled out of their car as the rest of the trash pack moaned in pain upon the floor. Sankson, however, was practically out cold with a large gash in his head. Maple? Jay asked as he then got on his hands and knees while crawling towards the girl he loved. Jay? She asked back as Quinn then pulled himself free from the car, then suddenly started screaming in horror. Oh! To this noise, everyone looked to snap back to the land of the living and bear witness to a terrifying sight. approaching them all while riding atop the large and bulky pink glitch by the name of Oblivion. Lotus smiled down upon his prey, while the yellow one by the name of Solidius sat behind him with a blank, singular-eyed stare.
There's more of them! Oh my god, there's more of them!
Maple freaked as she huddled beside Jay in a protective manner.
Oh, good! You're still alive! Apologies, friend. I don't exactly get the whole rules of the road shtick.
Lotus greeted as he hopped off his steed and began approaching the little spark once more.
Hey! You leave those kids alone!
Nox shouted through a pained scream as he contorted his robot hand into a little blaster. Before he could get a shot off, Lotus snapped his fingers and sent a strange blast towards the small mechanic that knocked him down into a paralyzed state. Still aware, but unable to move for the time being.
Knock!
Cot cried before he too was zapped by the strange energy.
No, Lotus! Why? Why are you doing this? I thought we were friends!
Jay pleaded as both Tucker and Sarv attempted to free themselves from their seatbelts.
Oh, silly Jay. We are friends. But sometimes, friends
Lie!
that only makes one's bonds more interesting.
Wouldn't you agree?
The cube expressed in his gritty little voice, just as Joby suddenly launched herself in front of the children, glowing with a powerful and golden light matter haze.
Keep your creepy ass away from my cousin!
Joby exclaimed as she activated her light matter blades and battle clothes, before lunging towards Lotus's nasty eye. However, before she could even strike, the yellow glitch cracked her right arm out and extended it into a massive strand of shards and electricity. Creating a massive whip, Solidius slashed and then lashed his shards around Joby's body in a tight and burning hold. Before the spark could scream, Solidius expelled a wave of that same paralyzing toxin into the spark's body, and promptly lashed her against the side of a building.
Joby!
Jay screamed in worry as his cousin slumped into a hurt, sitting position, now unable to move as well.
You!
She groaned through a slack jaw, while Solidius cracked her whip against the ground as a reply.
Very underwhelming, lab rat. Very underwhelming. Father would have been very ashamed if he hadn't ripped away his own life.
The cube taunted, sending a wave of disgust into Joby's heart. Swaying himself back around, Lotus then began to approach Jay, who now had all of his friends by his side, grouped together as a means of possible defense. But in truth, it left Lotus and his fellow glitches rather humbled for the care they shared for one another. Yet, before he could make his move, a familiar set of voices suddenly called from behind that left the glitch smiling. Coming down from above, with their energies restored, both Void and Jida yelled in a primal fury, preparing to deliver a combined attack upon the cube. However, Lotus, with what had to be a fraction of a second, contorted all of his levitating parts around and caught the married pair by their throats, and instantly sent a wave of that same paralyzing energy into their bodies.
What? Did you really think I would let you just shatter my limbs again? Aren't you two just so predictable?
Lotus exclaimed before violently throwing the married pair down and into the fountain side, resulting in the stone to break and water the spill on their bodies.
No!
Jay screamed before he was suddenly entangled by Solidius' whip and chugged to the other side of the street, all to the yelling screams of his friends and family. Landing hard with a skid and roll, Jay wheezed and groaned in pain as tears began to fall from his eyes. As he laid there in the rain, unable to move and full of fear, Jay coughed and wheezed as he then attempted to stand, but soon fell to a frozen still as he saw the glitches approaching. He wanted so desperately to fight back. He was too injured, too tired to fight. All he could do was watch in pure terror with the unknown thought of what could happen next.
Leave him alone!
Maple suddenly called as she stood to her feet and charged the otherworldly monsters.
Maple, no!
Boy cried as he tried to break out of his stun-locked state.
Maple!
Both Tucker and Sarv cried as well, along with the other kids shouting her name. With anger engulfing her soul,
The young Matter Girl extended her arms forwards and punched the back of Lotus's head, causing the Glitch King to stop, turn, and glare upon the little girl who was just trying to protect the boy she loved.
Yeah, that's right. You leave him alone. Otherwise you'll have to deal with me.
Maple screamed as she began to rush the massive Glitch, who just cackled and simply snatched the young girl off the ground by her neck.
Maple!
Jay screamed as the others yelled. For the Matter Girl then began to smack and punch Lotus's arm in a pure state of rage and fear.
Let me go, you big bully! You'll regret it! My friends will beat you to a pulp!
Grimacing with a sour stare, Lotus's face scrunched in annoyance before he began speaking aloud.
You know, you've got guts, kiddo. You've also got heart. And yet, the fighting spirit lacks in your soul. Quite a shame, really. Because this just makes this little trope all the sadder.
Releasing an energy pulse, Lotus blew everyone else a few yards away. All the kids went sprawling. Tucker and Sarv were ejected from their car, while Void and Jida were thrown off to the side. Throwing the girl down, Lotus glared upon her syrup-like form, then smiled once again, with a sinister thought filling his head.
Say, do you remember the last thing I said to you when we last met, Void? That somewhere and somehow another kid may not be as lucky as you?
Lotus asked, as he suddenly began to charge up with a glowing purple energy that caused everyone to stare in absolute horror. No! Lotus, no! Void begged as he tried to break free from his restraints.
No, don't do it! Maple! Run, sweetheart, run!
Jida screamed as she too attempted to break free from her numbing hold.
Maple!
Maple! Sarv and Tucker called as they weakly tried to crawl towards their daughter. Maple? Jay asked as well, as her body began to ignite into a purple haze from the glow of the Glitch King.
Next time, be sure to tell the kid the full story, because this is all on you!
As those final words were shared, Lotus ignited his eye into a fully charged Novaroom blast capacity and aimed right down upon the shell-shocked Maple. Unable to move from fright and injuries, the young Matter Girl, realizing what was about to happen, took one last look upon Jay, who had been reaching out for her with tear-filled eyes.
Jay.
Maple whispered, before the young girl was beamed upon at full capacity from Lotus's power stream. The world felt as though to fall back to a dead standstill. Jay, the adults, the kids, all of them looked on in silent disbelief as the once happy Matter Girl, the carefree, full of glee, wannabe author, was ignited with a burning light and reduced to the same fate as the poor officers. As the blast ceased and stream faded from view, all that was left was a crystallized shell of Maple sitting and terrified form. With adrenaline and a false sense of reasoning entering his heart, Jay heard nothing but an ear-shattering ring within his head that returned his power in a mighty rebound. Finding his strength and warping forwards in disbelief, the young boy slid the Maple's now lifeless and crystallized body, while all the other trash bag members approached as well. The world sounded muffled to Jay. He couldn't fully hear it, but the audible and distressed cries of both Tucker and Sarv wailed through the night as they attempted to stand and aid their daughter, who may have been still alive in their eyes. Shaking his head with tears spilling from his eyes, Jay wrapped his arms around Maple's crystallized form. No words came from his mouth, just gags and inaudible cries. A part of him was holding on to hope, a vain hope that she could still be alive, but the blank look in her mineral-covered eyes said that she was most certainly gone. All that remained was the little flower atop her head that broke off and drifted to the soaked road, where her body began to crumble away to everyone's disbelief. No. Jay whimpered as he and his friends watched Maple's form
start to shatter and turn to dust within the wind.
Maple. Oh God. Oh God, no. No.
Florence gasped as she covered her muzzle and began to break down.
No, please, Maple, don't go. Please don't go. Don't leave us, Maple, please.
Jay pleaded as he leaned his forehead down upon his best friend's forehead, but slowly caved and began to fizzle away.
No, God, please, no.
Sarv cried as both her and Tucker made it over at last. Quinn was lost in silence as everyone else gazed in a mourning shock. Nock and Cott stared wide-eyed as tears began to fall down both Joby's and Shida's face, all while Void just looked on with an emptiness within his heart.
No,
he quietly said as the last of Maple's body fizzled away into the night, leaving behind only the small flower that Jay had plucked for her. This wasn't real, the Sparklet told himself. This had to be a nightmare. There's no way she was gone. It couldn't be true. It's what Jay tried to tell himself as he shakily lifted his dust-covered hands while on the verge of puking. Now all sobbing and screaming in pain, the kids all looked to crumble within their minds, while both Sarv and Tucker tried to collect what was left of Maple off the ground, both wailing and screaming as they did so.
What have I done?
Jay wept as his entire body began to shake. As if to add fuel to the fire, the haunting cackle of Lotus erupted from behind as he pointed towards the mourning group with his finger. In response, the other two glitches began to laugh as well towards the horror scene they had all caused, leaving Jay in haunted silence.
Your fault, he said inside. This is all your fault.
As he reached down and picked up the tiny flower from the ground and held it close to his chest. As Jay and the others were left numb and unable to carry forwards, a new sound came from behind, one that snapped them all out of their shocked states and whirling their heads towards Void Novasun. With an enraged scream, Void charged his horns and connected his energy to that of the storm above. Doing this, he manipulated the electricity fields within the clouds and summoned a large lightning bolt to strike his body. Upon impact, Void's blues and sapphire shines suddenly shifted to that of a bright and powerful yellow, fully supercharging himself with pure hatreds towards the act Lotus had just committed. Unleashing a powerful energy pulse, Void leapt upwards with an otherworldly spark-endorsed scream and made a beeline right for Lotus, who couldn't help but smirk.
Ah, there's the Novasun I know!
The cube exclaimed as Void leapt up and then punched the cube so hard that he went flying and crashing into a nearby building.
Move!
Void then screamed in a command towards Jay and the rest as both Solidius and Oblivion began to charge towards Void in rapid steps. Having to put their sorrows aside, the trash pack along with both Sarv and Tucker got on their toes and took cover behind the flipped over SUV, while Void began to fight the glitches head on. Cracking her whip, Solidius began to raise and swing her weapon around until slashing downwards towards Void, who raised his arm up and caught it with a burning pulse. With glowing yellow eyes and a steaming hot electrical pollen radiating off his body, Void, with one heave, yanked the whip and swung Solidius up and over his head. Pulling down rightfully after, he slammed the glitch into the cement, but quickly rolled back around as the sound of Oblivion charging arose at an alarming rate. Quickly readying himself, Void braced for impact and caught the large bowl of a glitch by his jaws that drooled and buzzed with that familiar hot, one-way portal energy. As all this went down, Jay with weeping eyes peeked out from behind the car, with both Florence and ZB beside him, all while Sarv and Tucker, as well as the rest of the kids, continued to cry to the sudden loss of Maple's life.
Dad!
Jay quivered out as Void began to get the upper hand over Oblivion. Without even having to charge, Void unleashed a golden energy pulse that stunned the massive beast in its place. Rolling around and charging with a punch, Void smashed his fist into the side of the beast before activating his arm hooks, latching them into its mouth and swinging, going around once, then twice. Void, with a hateful scream,
flung the large creature away, sending it crashing and rolling alongside Solidius.
What's wrong, bucko? Can't handle another little loss? That's so sad!
Lotus asked as he leapt back in and smashed his fist into the ground. To this, Void merely dodged before getting struck down by a wave of rising spikes. As one would say, it was a close call. Stop talking! The spark spat as he opened his chest and unleashed a wave of rockets upon Lotus. As the massive glitch stumbled, Void wasted no time in blasting forwards and spearing the large monster through what was left of the water fountain. Not even a second after they went through, Void raised his arm back and deployed a pair of double brass knuckle spikes to his fists and began punching Lotus in his face. The whole time, however, the cube just laughed and laughed as Void continued to give him hell. Get out of my life! Void screamed as he then activated a bright yellow Nova Blade and stabbed it into the side of Lotus's head. Get out! Void then screamed again as he flung the glitch and smashed the large being hard against the pavement in a rolling sprawl. Quickly getting back up again, Void sprinted towards the downed cube and then sent a wave of electricity to his feet. Using this, Void powered himself up and leapt upwards in a mighty jump. Landing back down, he smashed his heels into the chest of Lotus before transforming his hands into blasters and firing a double set of beams into his body, unleashing everything he had in a fit of primordial spark-like rage. Continuing the cackle, Lotus raised his hand back and then punched Void off, while at the same time beginning to charge up his Nova Blast once again. Landing with a slide, Void glared upon Lotus with nothing but hatred as he himself began to power up with his own similar ability. Collecting all of his energy, Void created a yellow shining Nova Rune that began to charge up with his very own beam attack, a skill that took a while to learn, but most deadly when used. Dirty child killer! Void boasted as both him and Lotus released their two energy beams that locked together and ignited the small city sector into a bright and shimmering light. Looking on, everyone watched with tempted anticipation, all waiting for the purple beast to fall, to die for the unfixable damage that would come to haunt everyone for the rest of their lives. Yet, hope began to dwindle, for Void started to lose the blast attack. His supercharged energy started to dwindle, resulting in the paralyzing toxin to take back hold.
Oh, is someone getting sleepy? Or are you getting too old for this kind of action?
Lotus asked, as he then took in a large breath and unleashed all of his might, striking Void in the chest and sending him crashing backwards into a parked vehicle on the side of the road. As the final strike finished, Void's blues returned, while the rest of his helmet shattered apart to mere scrap. Hanging his head low, the mighty spark fell into a state of half consciousness and half sleepiness, as Lotus laughed in a victorious cry. Lumbering forwards towards the older spark, Lotus, while snickering, reached his hand down and plucked Void up by his foot, proceeding to dangle him upside down to be face to face. Swaying back and forth, unable to move, Void glared upon his adversary with nothing but hatred, while Lotus just kept smiling.
My! How the tables have turned. Gotta say, you haven't lost a beat in your skill. When put up against your own power, you really struggle, don't ya?
The Glitch King exclaimed before flicking Void in the face. I'll kill you. I'm gonna kill you. Void threatened as both Solidius and Oblivion reapproached, while recollecting themselves.
What do we do with the kid?
Solidius asked, when suddenly, a spotlight appeared above all three of them. From above, several news choppers appeared, while back below, many police cars and rescue vehicles arrived on the scene. For Sankson, who was thought to be out, had quietly called for backup during the skirmish, for the mayor of Aurora was still in danger, along with his close friends. Running out with their weapons drawn, several SWAT teams trained their crosshairs upon the glitch beings, who instantly put Void out in front of themselves as a barrier.
One move and the Dad of the Year gets torn in two!
The Glitch King called, while Jay and the rest stood back up by the policeman's side.
Boss, we're outmatched. What's the plan?
Solidius inquired, while Oblivion snarled and smashed his tail on the ground. Looking around and calculating as to what to do, Lotus began to brew an idea. One he knew that deep within would work out in some way, shape, and form. He knew he couldn't get Jay here, but perhaps in his own realm. Turning his face into a tooth-filled smile, Lotus suddenly snapped his fingers that warped Jida, Joby, and Noct to his side. All grunting in pain, Jay's family members were all picked up by both Solidius and Oblivion as they did their best to fight the numbing toxin in their systems. No! No! Jay called as he immediately took a step forwards, towards them, but was yanked back by Sarv's grasp. Jay! Jay, no! She begged in a broken state as the little spark began to fight back. No! They need my help! He cried as Lotus eyed down all of Void's little family members. What do you think you're doing, you murderer? Joby barked as the four of them were suddenly wrapped up back to back within Solidius' whip. I'll kick your ass, you blockheaded son of a bitch! Noct barked as he too attempted to break free. You'll pay for what you've done! Jida boasted as she then failed to warp herself away. Lifting them all up, Solidius broke a part of her whip and made it a dangling chain for the four heroes. She then turned and handed them to Lotus, who gladly took them in his grasp. Mom! Dad! Jay cried out as Sarv did her best to restrain the young boy. Sir, do we open fire? While the cops asked Sankston, who stared on with tensed eyes. Negative. Mayor Rogers and innocent civilians are in the line of fire. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. Chuckling, Lotus began to take a few steps forward, now dangling his hostages at his side. Walking up beside him, Oblivion hunched his large self down and allowed for both Lotus and Solidius to hop on his back.
Oh, Jay. Oh, sweet and innocent Jay. It seems that a new roadblock has appeared between me and you. Don't fret, however. I know for a fact that you wouldn't leave your beloved family behind. Our paths are destined to cross once again.
Lotus said with a burning confidence as he looked at Jay's struggling form, then towards the people of Aurora.
Witness, people of Earth! This is the beginning of a new way of life. Life at my side. Life that will give you importance.
Life within my new empire.
The large glitch exclaimed with joy, as he then raised a hand and summoned a ball of static-filled energy. Not even a second later, Lotus threw the strange essence downwards, which unleashed a whole other can of worms before everyone's eyes. Like a bomb going off, a massive beam of power erupted from where the fountain once stood, igniting to life an energy spire of static that stretched all the way up to the sky above. As it reached the stars, a massive split tore itself open, revealing an abyss of pure, multicolored static. Once unleashed, a sharp energy wave erupted to the world below, causing news choppers to short-circuit, phones to jam, and many other electrical devices to shut down. Along with this came a massive gust of wind that blew everyone to the ground, but gave Jay his chance. Guys! He cried as he got to his feet and began rushing the monsters. Jay, no! Florence called as she then leapt forwards and tackled her friend to the ground, causing them both to roll and get into a small skirmish. No! Let me go, Florence! Let me go! Jay pleaded while the wolf winced with tear-filled eyes. No! It's what they want you to do! They'll kill you too! Suddenly below at their sides, a large crack formed within the road, revealing another split of static that began to blast out rays of energy into the sky. Within seconds, the world above turned to a mixture of blood-red glows and dazzling blue shades, as the static portal began to grow larger in size. As all this happened, Void found himself entering a full-blown panic attack. It was like deja vu. It was Salvaheim all over again, for real this time. This couldn't be happening, he told himself. Not again. This couldn't be happening again.
Jay, thank you for everything.
Lotus thanked as he and his glitched companions began to ride their way towards the fountain spire.
I know I'll see you again soon. 'Cause if there's one thing I know about you, Sparks, is that you never leave another one behind or forget their loss. We'll be waiting for you, friend.
As Jay rolled over Florence, he reached out of her grasp and towards his family, who looked to be reaching back with their own expressions, which all screamed for him to stay away. Jay, run! Get the Pofnu! She'll protect you! Voight cried as he still struggled to break free. We'll find a way back to you, baby! We promise! Jada called as tears fell from her eyes. Frankston! God! Set the city into lockdown! Activate its defense mode in the full gear! Nock cried while Joby just attempted to bite through her chains. Be brave, son! Be brave! It's gonna be okay! Was the last thing Void was able to say before they all crossed through the portal and entered the once sealed off glitch realm. For a long moment, Jay just stared at the massive beam of energized static, watching as it rippled up to the sky. He couldn't process what just happened. Not only did his entire family just get kidnapped, but his best friend, the girl he loved, was gone. The worst part about it all, however, was the fact that he pulled the trigger by reawakening Lotus to begin with. The Glitch King. Suddenly leaping out from the portal, two polychrome glitches landed to the streets with deafening roars, while a yellow and green Sourclaw followed right after. Shit! Shit! Oh, open fire! Sangston cried in shock as all officers began to unleash hell upon the monsters that came through. Flying down from the torn open sky, Hellhawk swooped in and began to attack those unlucky enough to be in their sights. Get the children out of here! Now! Sangston then commanded as he began to shoot upon the creatures that swarmed the sky. Jay! Florence! Come on! Sprinkles wailed as several officers began to push both the trash pack as well as Sarv and Tucker back, all while more glitches began to arise. Mimics possessed vehicles and street signs, stables wobbled out like zombies. Worst of all, an unstable glitch crawled its way out from below and threw a police car aside. As all this hell began to break out, Jay's mind jumped to the one word his dad had said. Run! Beginning to sob uncontrollably, Jay shoved Florence off his body, got up, and began sprinting away from the chaos, away from everyone he had just hurt, and away from the parents that would never see or get to hug their daughter ever again. Jay! Sarv called before she and the rest of the kids were swiftly dragged away by a fleeing crowd. All the other members of the friend group began to call as well. They too were drifted off within the panic. All except for Florence, who got up on one knee, then kicked off her heels after the spark. Jay! Come back! She cried while giving chase to the fleeing and heartbroken boy, while the world itself began to repeat a haunting history, one that once fell upon Salvaheim and begun anew upon Void's adopted homeworld.